I'm gonna die, aren't I? Break legs. It's been a while since we've covered storage here on the channel, but QNAP reached out and wanted to send us something that I thought you guys might find really interesting. This is the brand new QNAP TVS-H674T. This is a Thunderbolt NAS, but that's not all it is. What we're gonna do today is I wanna show you the ins and outs of this very, very interesting NAS, and you'll see why I said yes to us checking this thing out. The QNAP TVS-H674T is a computer, right? This is essentially what this is. This has got a standard desktop Intel Core i5-12400. As well as that, this one features 32 gigs of SODIMM DDR4 memory, and you can upgrade it all the way up to 64 gig. So again, it is quite a lot like a PC. It's got 6 included drive sleds in the 674T with completely toolless installation, making it super duper easy to just pull the drives out, swap them if one dies. For the purposes of this video, I went kind of conservative with the storage in here just to show you guys what the deal is. We've got 6 Seagate iWolf 4 terabyte drives in here. Not heaps of storage by any means, but enough to show you the capabilities of this very, very interesting NAS. As mentioned, the 674T has this toolless mechanism. It does come with a key to lock the sleds if you really wanted to do that as well, but just showing you how this works. Just slide it out and there's no tools at all. You just kind of pull the clips away. Oh, lucky there's nothing important on this. Oh, Seagate's not gonna like that. As well as that, you've got 2 M.2 slots that can be used for caching. There is no tools required. And it uses clips like what we're seeing on newer motherboards to get that done. And you just kind of push it down and locks into place. Look at that, I got the Luke Skywalker M.2 drive here. One thing that QNAP's always been really good at is making setup and installation very, very easily. I'm going to show you how easy that is. Getting your QNAP NAS on your network is easy. There's a label on top of the case that explains how to do it, but setting up storage pools is a whole nother thing. We're going to add all of the spinning rush drives we got here to our storage pool, and I'm just going to go through this really quickly because this is the easiest way to do it. We don't need to set up anything fancy or anything. We're not going to turn on over provisioning or anything like that. Well, at least not too much over provisioning. This will show us how much we have available in the pool, and this is with 6 4 terabyte drives, and we're just gonna let it do its thing. But this is not the most interesting part of the setup. After setting up the basic storage pool, the first thing we need to do is set up a shared folder so we can set up SSD caching. So we're just gonna call it, let's just select the storage pool first. Let's call it files and stuff. Yep, that sounds about right. Let's call it files and stuff. Nothing exotic going on here. We're just going to go next. This is to do with the type of pool you're setting up. So for something like this, because let's say you're a video editor, you want the block size to be around 128K for larger files. And this just allows those larger files to be read quickly and written really quickly, right? So that's why you would do that. There are other options here, but because this is predominantly aimed towards video editing and content creation, that's what I would choose when setting it up. Setting up file access is easy. It's with the account that you use to log into the NAS itself. You can set up guest access rights if you really don't care about your security and if this is not being connected to any other device on your network. I'm just going to allow this just because it's going to make it easier for me to set this up when I'm filming. And this is all of the settings that you've got set up for that shared folder. Now what we're going to do is go back to the storage setup and we're going to enable SSD caching. Usually the read cache is not enabled. We need to go to configure that and select the share you want the SSD caching to be on. This is a good time to select the caching mode. All IO is recommended for video editing and whatnot, and random IO is good for virtualization, which we have on here, which we'll come back to, but I didn't set it up for that when I set this up for the video. Now, when we check the cache for both read and write, they've got a drive allocated each. And that's basically it. You can also see that we're connected to the network here, and we've got our Thunderbolt connection, and this is plugged into my laptop when I recorded all this. And you can look at the resource monitor and we'll show you your network throughput and all of that stuff. Oh, look at this, a graphics card tab. Hey, we're going to come back to that. I know I went through this really quickly, but the way the storage pools work on QUTS Hero is it makes everything as familiar as possible if you've set up storage before, but what you're not seeing is this isn't really RAID. So it's in comparison to whatever the ZFS equivalent is. So say for instance, RAID 6 would be something like RAID Z2, so and so forth. So they're just making it easier for people who are familiar with the way storage worked in the past, but the underlying subsystem is ZFS. This is a Thunderbolt NAS with Thunderbolt 4, which will allow you to transfer files up to 40 gigabits per second. That's why you need that SSD cache. And the way that they do this is with an included Thunderbolt card inside. Here we've got Crystal Disk Mark running on Windows on the right and the equivalent program on macOS running on the left, just to show you the speed with a 1 gig file sample size, and the queue depth is different for both applications, but this is just to give you an average idea of what the speed for storage will look like for those 1 gig files. We'll then shift this up to a 4 gig file just for a bit of comparison. You can see the speeds that we're getting here are not as fast as you would expect. This would be about as fast as writing to a network drive at about 10 gigabit. And on the PC, we've only got a connection that's up to 20 gigabit with the motherboard that I had on hand for this testing. For those wondering if this NAS will charge your computer, the answer is yes, it will. It absolutely charges your computer. For a bit of a real world transfer test, this is what it's like reading from the NAS. I just sped it up a little bit. And here is us writing the same files back to the NAS. And this is about the speed you'd see with 10 gigabit network storage. So not the full speed of 40 or 20 gigabit. But let's take a look inside. I've already pulled out all the screws just to make this easy to pop the lid off, but it's got 3 screws holding the lid. We've got 2 SODIMM DDR4 RAM slots here. This is 3200 mega transfer memory, 16 gig modules. However, I did notice that it has a warranty sticker on it, so it says void the warranty if you replace the RAM. QNAP, that's not cool, guys. Don't do that. That's silly. If people want to upgrade the memory, they should be able to, considering the CPU in here is not one that requires ECC. And you know, if people need a bit more memory in their NAS, let them upgrade it without voiding warranty. That's very silly. I don't like that. Underneath this heatsink lies something that I thought was quite interesting from the jump. Now, what you're seeing on your screen now is when I initially pulled this apart to see what was underneath. This has a regular LGA 1700 socket, and it's got this heatsink with a copper slug in it, which does an adequate job of cooling the CPU. It's semi-passively cooled. Essentially how this works is there's a vent here on the case. It draws the air through this fin stack and out the back. If you don't have the side panel on, it actually makes the cooling a lot worse because there's no airflow path and it can't force the air to be pulled across the heatsink. Which leads me into the next thing. Yeah, this is using a regular LGA 1700 Intel Core i5-12400. If you really wanted to upgrade this and you didn't give a shit about your warranty, you could just change the CPU out. I have a plan to maybe try out installing a 12700. It's got a couple more cores in it and it would be good for virtualization. So let me know if that's something that you wanted to see, because yeah, it may overwhelm this cooling solution, but ladies and gents, there's only one way to find out, so maybe we'll find out together and maybe we'll make this catch fire. For a lot of users, the dual 2.5 gigabit Ethernet adapters in the 674T might be just enough. This is a QNAP QXP card, and this looks like PCIe, and it kind of is. So it's got a regular PCIe connector, but you'll notice there is an additional connector here for extra bandwidth, and this is to do with how the Thunderbolt stuff handshakes and for extra throughput. Next to that is where it gets super duper interesting, ladies and gents. Check this out. A regular full size by 16 PCIe slot. We can have some fun with this. You can put any network adapter that is compatible with Linux in this thing. So here's a Mellanox Connect X3. All right, so if you wanted to plug that in, let's say you had some fun transceivers for things like, hey, you got a fiber on your network, or you wanted to do 10 gig. With a card like the Connect X3, you just plug your transceiver in and you're good to go. So any type of interconnect that you need this NAS to have, you can do. Let's say, for instance, you had a commodity network card like this random TP-Link Ethernet adapter. This is a 10 gig card, and you wanted to put that in there. You could also do that. So there's lots of different applications for this, and the one that you're thinking of, yes, we will be testing that. I thought this one was worth showing. This is with that Mellanox card connected to the network, and you can see that we've got a 10 gigabit link, and that other TP-Link card that I showed in the video also works this way as well. As with most QNAP NASs, this runs QUTS Hero, which is their latest version of their operating system, and it allows you to install apps, so you can do a lot of different things. Basically, you've got this whole app store, which allows you to turn this into any type of device that you really want, which leads me into virtualization. If you're familiar with the Zen Hypervisor or Proxmox, this is very familiar to that. So if you are an enthusiast who knows about virtualization, you're gonna feel right at home here. The next question you've probably got is, hey, this has got a PCIe slot. This runs a pretty solid hypervisor. Can I pass a GPU through to that virtual machine and use this as a gaming PC? Yes. If you're wanting to use the 674T as a gaming PC, you're gonna need a couple things. First of all, you're gonna need a GPU. This is the Galax EX Gamer. This is an RTX 4070, fairly decent GPU, pretty good for this type of application. Obviously, it's not gonna fit inside the NAS. So we're gonna need a riser cable. I've got this 30 centimeter Cooler Master Gen 4 riser cable. And the way I figured to get this to work, and you need to do it this way, is remove the back plate here and like this, and then you flip the cable over, and then you plug it in, and then you run the cable out the back of the NAS. And then we're gonna put the lid back on so the CPU doesn't get too hot, because like I explained how the cooling solution works. You're gonna need another power supply, and you're gonna need one that's jumped. This stupid thing, right? This is the way that I jumped them really jankily. It's just like with one of these connectors, and I'm like, oh, okay, just put it in. So dumb. Then we got to plug the GPU in, which is ridiculous. Good enough, right? I hate this. I hate it so much. Right, so now we've got power. Plug that in. Turn on the power supply so the GPU has power. Power into the NAS. We're gonna need some type of network into the NAS as well. Oh, look at that. The GPU just went RGB. All right, to show you guys there's no trickery going on, here's my laptop. All right, and I'm gonna hit power on this virtual machine. Right, we'll wait for it to power on. And just watch this monitor here, right? As this powers on, watch this monitor. It's running off the spinning Rust, so it's not super fast, but you can install it to SSDs, but you know. Wait, is that just booting up that quickly? What? Okay, that was really quick. That was a lot faster than I thought it was gonna boot up, but I think because I booted it up before, it cached everything to the SSDs I got in there. But let me show you guys Cyberpunk running in a virtual machine on the NAS. How crazy is this? I won't run the benchmark, I'll just load into the actual game. All right, we'll hit continue. This is at 1440p. Hopefully my V is not naked.
It will be.
But look at the loading bar, because they're running off spinning Rust, it's so slow. Oh, I'm gonna die, aren't I? Break legs. Yep. I'm also naked. I mean, it runs fine. This looks really good. This is probably using frame generation, so it looks smoother than it really is, because you know, fake frames equals real games. Oh, this is bad. I am completely stuck up here, aren't I? This is running really well. I would say I could probably crank it up a bit. You can hear the NAS is getting a bit loud too. Gaming on an RTX 4070 on a NAS. It works. How good's that? Playing games on the 674T, while really cool, presents a couple issues, and there's a couple elephants in the room that go along with this. The first thing is the power supply doesn't include a PCIe power cable, so even if you were to be able to plug a GPU into this, you need to find an alternate way to power this, like I showed with the external power supply. Really, really janky, but if you really wanted to, you could. The other thing is, a lot of GPUs are quite large, so the fact that they support this is cool, but you need to run a riser cable out of the case, out of the chassis and whatnot, and do it that way, and then use an external power supply. So then you'd be asking yourself, why wouldn't I just build a gaming PC or a NAS with a regular motherboard and CPU to do all that? I'll come back to reasons why this exists. The other thing is, most GPUs are just large, and unless you've got a single slot card that's passively powered off the slot, it's just not going to work. So there is that too. Another thing that I didn't try, and I didn't get around to trying, is using a Thunderbolt GPU, but I'm fairly certain that this would just work. But yeah, I didn't get time to test it because I lost the GPU that goes in my Thunderbolt GPU enclosure.
How?
Don't ask how. It just I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. So yeah. Hey, we've got a lot of stuff. You know, we're in the midst of moving houses, so you know, stuff gets lost.
Sure.
Yeah, moving houses. Sure. Using this as a gaming PC is pretty cool. It's kind of interesting as well, but that's not the only use case for a GPU for the 674T. You can use it for more professional workloads. Like you can use this to automatically transcode footage or re-encode or create proxies if you're a video editor. So you don't have to do that in your editing software. That can all be done on the NAS, which is exceptionally cool, especially using 40 gigabit Thunderbolt. That's going to be very quick for moving those files backwards and forwards. That's why I think this uses a regular desktop CPU as well, because it's got integrated Intel graphics. It can leverage that too. But let's say you have an NVIDIA GPU and you want to use NVEnc for that, you can do that as well. As well as that, if you're running Plex on here, you can use it to transcode your video files as well, which is a really nice use case. But the fact that you can use a GPU in a NAS is really good. And this is the future of storage and these type of devices. This isn't just a NAS now. This is more of a hybrid device that allows you to leverage other things on your network and other things for your professional workloads. And this is very cool. I like it. The real use case for this NAS, and for any NASs like this in particular, is for content creation, especially with the fact that you can do in-device encoding and transcoding without having to worry about the software setup. It just does it. There is almost no setup to do this. And this is the reason why these devices cost the money they do. You're not just buying PC hardware. You got to get that thought out of your mind. Yeah, you could get a motherboard, a 12400, 32 gigs of RAM in a case and a power supply and basically build this thing if you wanted to for much less money, but you're not buying PC hardware. You're buying a solution that does everything for you. If you're a professional who's editing videos or running a design studio, the last thing on your mind is building a PC to do all this. And for those who aren't enthusiasts, who just want to get their job done, a solution like this is, if I'm being honest, worth the money. You plug it in, it's set and forget, and does everything you absolutely need it to do. And it is expensive. We'll talk about that in a moment, but QUTS and the way that it's built just makes it easier for people who might not understand how it all works. And this video is not sponsored by QNAP or anything like that. This is just something I wanted to really drill in because I've worked in jobs where I've had to deploy devices for people who aren't technically minded, who want to be able to manage things themselves, and things like these QNAP NASs have been very, very good for them. But remember, this is not a backup solution. This is just a storage device, right? Backing up is a whole nother thing and it's a whole nother problem, but yes. In terms of pricing for the QNAP TVS-H674T in the US is going for around $2,400 US, or in Australia, around about 4,000 Australian dollars. Now, this is a very, very expensive device, but as mentioned, if you want to build a PC and do that, you can if you want. But you're buying a solution here, and you're buying a solution that is very easy to deploy for anyone who just doesn't understand everything about storage. Now, if you do understand a lot about storage, this could also be pretty good for you too, especially because it's got a PCIe slot. You can plug whatever you want in. In fact, if you really wanted to, this is something that I've been toying with as well, is putting in an HBA, installing TrueNAS on a virtual machine, passing that through to the TrueNAS virtual machine, and then running TrueNAS on this next to QUTS Hero, which would be a very, very cool video. So make sure you're subscribed, because I think I'm actually going to try and do this and see how well it works. Hey, it might not work, but I think it's going to work pretty dang good. If you like this video, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe, do all those things. And you can watch a video up here where we talk about something else to do with storage. Maybe it will tickle your fancy, maybe not, but we've got a lot more storage stuff coming up very, very soon, because you may or may not know, you know what? I'm not saying anything. I'm just gonna make you watch this video here, or don't watch it. It's completely up to you. Thanks for watching, I suppose.